Well, I haven't interviewed Michael B. Jordan before, but apart from the fact he was very late, but then he's the director of the picture, so he's entitled to be as late as he wishes. He was delightful to speak to, and he kind of wanted to, at the end of the interview, we'd done all our time, but he kind of wanted to carry on. But anyway, Creed 3 is his new creation. What did you think?
Well, a number of things to say off the back of that. The first one is, you raised the question about trilogy, and I think there was a significant sort of, was it a trilogy?
Yeah, my reading of that was
no,
it wasn't.
No. And also we know from the fact that Sylvester Stallone has fallen out with the producers because the whole thing about his character isn't absent. I mean, I only know this now because I was talking to Dave Norris last night about it, and Dave said, about the Sylvester Stallone thing, that he wanted his character to continue to be in it, and then it all got a bit messy. So, but the whole idea was to move the franchise away from that, and that's another drama story to be had elsewhere. But of course, Stallone's character is no longer in it. This is now absolutely a different series. During that interview, Michael B. Jordan said a very interesting thing about ASL and boxing, that on the one hand, the hands of the characters are used, to land punches and to land body blows for violence, but actually it's very important to see that juxtaposed against the signing. And that fascinated me as an observation because I've always felt that on screen fight sequences, and particularly boxing sequences, you have to see them as choreographed dances, and you have to see the way in which the movement works as akin to dance. And certainly during the big fight that the whole thing leads up to, this isn't a plot spoiler in any way at all. There is a big fight. Of course, it's a Creed movie. The way in which it's choreographed is very much like dance, and that does relate back through the rest of the drama through the ASL. There's an interesting decision made during that fight to, at a significant moment, take everyone else away, so that the fight almost appears to be existing simply between the two central characters. I actually thought it was quite a visually arresting way of doing it. I mean, it's always difficult to find a new way of doing a boxing fight sequence. Everyone still looks at what Scorsese was doing with Raging Bull and the fact that they were altering camera speeds within a single shot. Nowadays, technology makes that stuff much, much easier. But there was a very interesting creative decision there to do something in the middle of the fight to strip away everything else because it's in a big arena and everything is going on, and then just make it about the two characters. A slightly less successful decision, I think, about intercutting between their present selves and their past selves. Just that felt a little bit on the nose, but it still works. I mean, it still does. And the other thing to pick up on your interview was, you mentioned that the subject of misogyny. It is fascinating that the spectacular bodies on display in this series are male. The way in which the camera looks at the fighters there's a lot of the film is about showing you their bodies and their physicality, and it is kind of breathtaking. I always remember that front cover of Rolling Stone. Do you remember that when Black Panther was out and Chadwick Boseman was on the front of Rolling Stone? It was just like the most astonishing kind of portrait. And the film, this is why I relate it to dance and physicality. All that stuff is important. I thought all that stuff was delivered pretty well. And it is still interesting that these are movies in which the bodies on display are male, not female. That said, I think the rest of it is pretty standard, solid. It's not remarkable. It's definitely an absolutely by numbers Rocky narrative. We know how the Rocky narrative works, whether or not it actually involves Rocky. The thing is done, called out of retirement. One line, no, you can't. Well, I must. And there is even a training montage that did feel like it ought to have that song from Team America, World Police, I Need a Montage. So I think that the surrounding drama feels pretty pedestrian. Although pedestrian, not bad, fine. The fight sequences I enjoyed, and I thought they were the point at which the drama sort of lifted itself up a little bit more, just because I'm interested in the way in which you physically would do that stuff. Jonathan Majors is an immense screen presence in every sense of the word, and I keep referring back to the fact that if you look at Last Black Man in San Francisco, in which he's completely the opposite of that, and yet in this film and also in the Ant-Man film, he exudes this kind of sense of do not mess with me. I think the thing that's important is just to remember at this point, is because he's about to be he's massive already, but he's about to be properly massive, is that isn't just what he does. He has a whole, intricate range that is way beyond being the villain.
But if you're going to hire him, he always comes with his sound system. I mean, if I was Michael B. Jordan, I'd have said, Oi, Majors.
Turn it off. I'm trying to direct a film here. So, yeah, it's solid and pretty workaday out of the ring with some interesting things, but it's the physicality of it. And I was particularly struck by as I said, by the comment that he made to you about the hands being used to sign and the hands being used to box, because the film is concerned with its physicality.
Yeah, and he called me brother.
I know.
So, that was quite an impressive start. Am
I right in remembering that Chadwick Boseman, gave you a manly hug? There was something that happened as you were...
No, right at the end. It was after Chadwick had done his... I'd told him about the Martin Scorsese slightly dismissive quote. Well, very dismissive.
And he gave it an incredibly brilliant, thoughtful answer
about the power of what they were doing.
Yes.
And why they did it. And then I said Wakanda Forever, and he did the W thing and bowed like a kind of a genuflect.
Yeah, that's right.
Which in one of those tiny BBC studios, he sort of just overpowered the whole...
but that's one of the proudest moments of your life.
Well, it was just one of those... It was memorable for that, because the film was perfectly fine, because it was that adventure American kind of cop that he was in. But it was, as listeners will remember, that it was, when do I ask him about Scorsese? Because I want to ask him about Scorsese, but if I ask him too soon, it might be the end of the interview, because he'll walk out. And as it turned out, that was the bit that we played after his very untimely passing. Because it was such an extraordinary, passionate soliloquy about the power of Black Panther.
Also worth pointing out, just because you raised with Michael B. Jordan the thing about, the directing always being a part of Rocky. Of course, Stallone had initially wanted to write and direct the first Rocky movie, and the circumstances were, you need a director who's directed before. He then, of course, did step into the directorial chair and had a very solid career behind the camera. But the script and the starring was fine. But with the first Rocky movie, it was like, you're not ready to do this. And I do think it's interesting that by the time Michael B. Jordan is doing this, he has, as you quite rightly said, worked with and seen a bunch of directors. And the fact of Ryan Coogler saying to him, you got this, you can do this.
But imagine that it's your first movie and you are in the middle of the pandemic, and how you do those scenes. Even if you've done 10 movies, you're going to find that challenging. Anyway, Michael B. Jordan, the guest, and Creed 3 is the movie. I
would suggest it'll be number 1 next week. I think it'll take Ant-Man off the top spot.
I think he can take Ant-Man. So it's
he can take Ant-Man.
Well, I think so, because I think Ant-Man is vulnerable.
So Jonathan Majors in Creed is going to take out Jonathan Majors in Ant-Man.
Correct. He might be number 1 and number 2.
He's going to do a Beatles. He's going to knock himself off the top spot.
Thanks very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed making it. While you're here, check out all the other videos, because they're cool too, aren't they?
Yeah, and if you want to keep up to date with everything Kermode and Mayo's Take, then check out our social channels.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
I mean, I would. I have done.
Excellent.